Hey guys, so this is part 2 of lesson 3.3 for our Algebra 2 class. We're going to do polynomial division, but we're going to use something called we did long division already in part 1. This part we're going to do something called synthetic division. So first of all, what I'd like you guys to do is do this problem right here using long division, and then I'm going to show you how to do it using synthetic division. So you guys should pause the video and then do this long division problem. Don't forget if you have missing terms, you need to put in 0. So I have a missing x squared term. And I'm dividing this by x minus 2. So with the long division, you're going to look at this x, this 3x to the 4th, and you have to multiply by 3x cubed to get the 3x to the 4th. So 3x cubed times x minus 2 is going to be 3x to the 4th minus 6x to the 3rd. And then we subtract, so 2x cubed minus a negative 6x minus a negative means we're going to add the 6x cubed, so we have 8x cubed. And then we're going to drop down this next term, so plus 0x squared. And then you look again at this x and 8x cubed. You have to multiply by 8x squared to get 8x cubed. So I'm going to take 8x squared, multiply it by x minus 2, and I'm going to write that down right here. So 8x squared times x is 8x cubed, and then minus 16x squared. And subtract. You're subtracting both of these terms. So 0x squared minus a negative 16 is going to be positive 16x squared. And then, of course, 8x cubed minus 8x cubed is 0, which is why we picked to multiply by 8x squared. So that first term always has to drop out. Bring down this minus x, and you have to multiply x by 16x to get 16x squared. So multiply 16x by the divisor and write that down here. This is 16x squared minus 32x, and you're going to subtract. So when we subtract a negative 1x minus a negative 32, you add the 32, so it's going to be 31x, and then we're dropping down the 4, and I'd have to multiply x by 31. So put that in the quotient, and then we're going to multiply 31 times x minus 2, and you put that result down here. 31 times x is 31x. 31 times the negative 2 is going to be 62, negative 62, and subtract. All right, so you end up adding the 62 because it's minus a negative, and we get that results in 66. This is my remainder because x will not go into that anymore. So my answer is 3x cubed plus, so I have the 3x cubed plus 8x squared plus 16x plus 31, that is my quotient, plus the remainder, which is 66, over the divisor. So this is my answer right here. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to do this using synthetic division. So here's what you do. You look at all of these coefficients, and you have to put in zeros for any missing coefficients, which we have a missing x squared term. And so this has a coefficient of 3, 2, and then 0 for the missing term, a negative 1. You got to make sure you put negative 1, and then 4. So I'm going to write those down. I'm going to leave a space in between each coefficient. 3, 2, negative 1. Oops, I forgot my 0. It's really easy to forget that missing term, so don't do that. Just pay attention to that. And then I'm going to put a little box right here. Get rid of that line. And what I'm going to put in the box is, if I'm dividing by this factor of x minus 2, what goes in the box right here is what would make x minus 2 equal to 0, which is x equals 2. So that's going to go right here. And here's what you do. Put a bar. leave some space and put a bar right there. Watch this. And you're going to just, the first term, that first coefficient, which was from that 3, you drop it down and you write it right below the 3. Then you multiply 2 times 3. What is 2 times 3? 6. It is 6. And then you add. So 2 plus 6 is 8. Write it down right below. So you're going to put this in a column and you're going to line up your columns. You're going to do this repeatedly. You're going to go 2 times 8 and write that here, which is 16. And you add. So 16 plus 0 is 16. And now I'm going to multiply the 2 times the 16, which is 32, and I'm going to put that right there. Negative 1 plus 32 is 31. And then the 2 times the 31 is 62. Add those together, you get 66. Look at our quotient here. Look at these numbers. So we had 3, 8, 16, 31. 3, 8, 16, 31. And my remainder, so this last term right here is the remainder when you do the division. I always put a bar there to remind myself that that's the remainder. And then these numbers over here are going to be the coefficients of the quotient. I say that again. Those are the coefficients of the quotient. And so this guy right here, this is the remainder, the 66. So starting at 31, it's going to be, it's a positive 31 because there's no negative in front of it. If it was a negative 31, it'd be, you'd have a coefficient of negative 31. So this is going to be my constant term. This is going to be my x term, and it's going to increase by power of like 1 degree on the x as you go to the left. So it's going to be, so this is constant, this is an x term, this is going to be x squared, it's going to be x cubed. So I get 3x cubed plus, now we're going to drop the exponent by 1, so plus 8x squared plus 16x plus the 31 plus my remainder over my divisor. So I'm getting the exact same thing that I got using long division. So let's do another problem with synthetic division. We're gonna skip the remainder here. Hang on a second. Okay, so let's do this problem, example 2. So we're gonna do synthetic division here. So we're looking at these coefficients. I got a 5 for the x cubed term, I've got a 3 for the x squared term, I have a negative 1 for the x term, and then the constant term is 2. Now, I didn't point this out in the first example, but when you're doing synthetic division, you have to have what's called a linear factor that you're dividing by. So it has to be x plus or minus some number. You can't do it if it's like a quadratic where it's degree 2 or degree 3, then you have to go back to long division. But oftentimes we're dividing by just a linear factor, which is going to have the form x plus or minus a number. So when that's the case, then you can use this synthetic division, and you'll see it is a lot faster, but you do have to remember the steps. So the steps are, we're going to write down our coefficients, and there's no missing terms, so I don't need to worry about that. And the number that goes here is whatever makes this equal to 0, which is negative 3. So put the negative 3 in the box, draw a line, leave some room. First step, drop down the 5, and then you're going to multiply. Negative 3 times 5 is 15. Then add, and then multiply. What is 18 times 3? I should know that off the top of my head, but I don't. 18 times 3, quick. 54. I actually did know that. Negative 54, and then add. So negative 1 plus a negative 54 is negative 55. And then you're going to go 3 times 55 is going to be positive because you have a negative times a negative. And you get 165. And I'm putting a bar here because remember that last term is going to be my remainder. So I have a remainder of 167. So when you do this division, what you get for the quotient plus divisor, or remainder over divisor, remember this is my remainder, and then the quotient has these coefficients. This negative 55 is going to be my constant term. I'm going to write that down. Constant. This is going to be my x term. So it's going to be 18x, and this is going to be x squared term. So when I write this down, it's 5x squared plus 18x minus 55 plus the remainder over the divisor. All right, so one more example here. I want you guys to do this on your own and then come back and check your answer. But first, let me clue you in. Watch for missing terms and put zeros in for those coefficients if anything is missing. All right, so hopefully you did it on your own. Let's check your work. I'm going to use a different color here. So I have 4, and I have a missing x squared term, so I have to put a 0, and then negative 6, and then a 1. And the number that goes in the box is when does x minus 2 equal 0, and it's when x is 2, so you put a 2 in the box. Drop the 4, multiply. You don't have to draw all those arrows that I had before. Add, multiply, 2 times 8 is 16. Add, and you should get 10. Multiply 2 times 10, which is 20. And this is my remainder. And these are the coefficients of my quotient. So make sure you write this down also, like in the answer, the format I want is the quotient plus remainder over divisor. So this is the coefficients of the quotient. So when you do this polynomial division, you would get, this is my constant term, this is x, and this is x squared. So 4x squared plus 8x plus 10 plus 21 over x minus 2. Okay, so that is all I'm going to do for right now for synthetic division. So you can go ahead and start working on the 3.3 part 2 assignment on synthetic division. But look for future videos. We're going to go over something called the factor theorem. Basically, that just says that if the remainder is 0, it's a factor. Like x minus 2 is not a factor of this polynomial over here because we didn't get a remainder that is 0. If you think about like when you're 10, when I divide 10 by 2, I get 5 with no remainder. That's because 2 is a factor of 10. So when you have a remainder of 0, what you're dividing by is a factor of the original. And that's really why we're using this, and you'll see, we'll go into that in a different video. And then there's another theorem called the remainder theorem, which is also an interesting theorem. And that's not going to be part of this assignment, so I'm not going to do that right now, but you guys can go do the 3.3 part 2 on synthetic division.